I suppose that in my first term as chairman, that it could be said that Whatcom County members have again brought the party back from oblivion. This is one of the reasons I felt strongly that Whatcom County should host the convention this year. Nobody could remember a state convention up here, and so that really made the case for me. I ask all of you to join me in thanking the convention committee for all their hard work in putting this convention together. A lot of time and effort went into putting on a great convention in a short time that we had. Some of those on the great team include Tina Sorensen, Whatcom County Vice Chair, Ron Bailey and Linda Kane, Chris and Agnes Dutre, Bill Vaught, Brad Paris, Rob Stratton, and others. Special thanks and appreciation go to Jason Del Ra, the convention chairman and Whatcom County Libertarian chairman. Last but not least, Barb Del Ra, the convention vice chair. Hey, Barb. Barb, thank you. You know that during the March convention planning meeting, I had noticed that the trees were looking really dead, that they just would not do for the convention. So I asked the committee to see what they could do about putting some leaves on them. Looks like they did a great job. I call the annual convention of the Libertarian Party of Washington State in our 41st year to order. Those with voting delegate status on their name tag in blue can vote at this time, and a motion may be made during the credentials report that may change those eligible to vote. I will now entertain a motion to approve the agenda as printed in your convention packs.
So moved.
Is there a motion?
Moved. Moved. Seconded.
Fritz Sands moves that we accept the agenda as printed in the convention packs. Is it seconded?
Second.
Seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. I will now entertain a motion to approve the convention rules for this year's convention as printed in the convention packs.
So moved.
Jason moves. A second for that? Second. And all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes. I now entertain a motion to approve the minutes from last year's 40th anniversary convention as printed in the convention packs.
So moved.
Jason, Mr. Del Ra moves. Is it second?
Second.
Seconded. And all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes. Thank you very much. We're going to give the chairman's report now. Last year the convention was the end of my first year as chairman. There were very few volunteers with last year's convention, but it went well with Gary Johnson as our star guest. It was personally a tough time for me due to a family horrific tragedy that began just before the convention and caused me to miss half a Sunday. Fortunately, we had a spare chair. Mark Henkel, the national chairman, was here. The momentum built with the Cascade Liberty Summit. With the Libertarian National Convention in Las Vegas the first week of May, I plan to stay a week in Vegas due to the many meetings and other activities required of a state chair at National Convention in a presidential election year. It was going to be tough to afford the Red Rock Casino, but I found a roommate to split room costs. The guy I found was very interesting and serious young man who has great ambitions. I was fascinated at the prospect of meeting him. We seemed to click via phone and email, and he had been very active and successful in organizing 7 counties in Northern California. That impressed me, and I was very impressed when I did finally meet C. Michael Pickens for the first time. The state had a good delegation in Vegas, and we worked well together, so everything went smooth. I remember as a kid watching the R's and D's national conventions on TV. I was always fascinated by the chair's reports of the vote totals of the delegations. At the convention, I soon found myself in that role, trying to promote the state's virtues while giving the vote totals. After Vegas, we had to shift to high gear. When elected in chair of May of 2011, I understood that my primary mission was to get the 2012 presidential candidate on the Washington state ballot. Now the time had come to navigate the funny rules that are the Washington state election law. With help of the SEC members, volunteers around the state, we held 18 days of petitioning events all over the state, including advertising them in the newspaper at least 10 days in advance. I myself held 2 days in Bellingham, then 2 days in the Tri-Cities. Dave Werdinger held 3 weekends in Spokane, Michael Wilson a couple days in Olympia, Miles Holden, Fritz Sands, and others did Green Lake, and they did Pride Fest in Seattle Center and 4th of July at Gasworks. Michael Donahue and Ernie Lewis covered Kingston with a visit from Judge Gray, and finally Ralph Edwards in Clark County finished off in Vancouver. We were not the first minor party to submit our signatures and documentation, but we were 3 weeks early. On the morning of August 1st, just after I arrived at my in-laws' house in Montlake, I received a call from the Secretary of State's Election Division, informing me that we had met sufficiency for the Johnson-Gray ticket, and it would be on the ballot in Washington State. This was just 1 hour before Fritz Sands and I were to pick up Gary Johnson at SeaTac. I was so glad that I could give Gary the news in person. That day, Fritz and I took Gary Johnson to an interview with the Seattle Times editorial board, then to a Dory Monson live radio interview where Dory endorsed him on the air. Mid-afternoon, we had planned a little rally with Gary at Pike Place Market. I even have a picture of Gary with the pig. We then drove in heavy rush hour traffic to the Tacoma Rainiers game. I need to pause here a second to mention Steve Serrano. Without Steve, this event would not have happened. I must say this was a very successful fundraiser for the Johnson-Gray ticket. We had our own box area with food and a great view of the game. I think those that were there would agree that it was a very memorable event. On the late night return to downtown Seattle, I was the only one awake with Gary and Fritz News. The next day I picked up Gary for a TV interview with Robert Mack, and while filming, we had to pause a few times due to the Blue Angels that were practicing over the studio. Gary mentioned that Libertarians would not close I-90 since we trust people not to have an accident when the Blue Angels flew over. This became Robert Mack's tagline, actually. I must pause again here to thank Mike Wilson for his efforts in getting this interview with the Seattle Times interview. After the Robert Mack interview, Gary had a radio interview on a show in New York. He was on the phone while I drove 520 to the Microsoft campus for a lunch speech there and an event there as well. Then back over 520 to downtown Seattle for the Fox Business News live interview. Dan Springer, the Fox News Northwest correspondent, also did an interview for a story they were pitching to the network on for minor party candidates. Then we went back over 520 again to go to Crossroads Park in Bellevue for a picnic. Our event coordinator, Kira Sands, organized and produced a great spread. Everyone had a good chance to meet and talk with Gary. Halfway through, Fritz and I had to take Gary for a online town hall, and luckily Mark Taft, a longtime member, lived just a few blocks away. So with Fritz's notebook and Mark's internet connection, Gary was online, and he did the town hall. And later he told me it was the smoothest hookup he had ever experienced. After the picnic, while driving Gary back to his hotel, he told me they did not think that there was any more that could have been squeezed into the few days we had. The next morning before 4 a.m. at Gary's hotel, he was ready to go to the airport. Those 3 days I will never forget. Those were the best payoff for all the time, energy, and treasure that being state chair requires. Many volunteers helped with this campaign swing to be a success. Meanwhile, Mike Pickens' efforts were paying off. After returning from Vegas to Snohomish County, Mike started mixers in Seattle and in Pierce County. He brought together a number of volunteers of high quality that continue to move this party forward today. Things were rolling pretty well with campaign events and people meeting across the state. And then on August 18th and 19th, Judge Jim Gray did another campaign swing through the state. He had been through here at the end of June and helped with some of the petitioning then. He spoke at HempFest in Seattle, and Mike Pickens had returned from a few weeks ago from D.C. To be the Johnson campaign coordinator. Though I was to handle Jim on Sunday, I drove down Saturday and went to HempFest for the first time in my life. Boy, I tell you, what an experience down there. Ned Kelly was manning the party's booth. Judge Jim Gray spoke later, and I really wanted to be there for that. I must pause here to thank Ned Kelly, who made Hempfest booth happen. Unfortunately, I must report a great loss to the party. Ned moved back to Kansas City, and we miss you very much. After Hempfest, Kira had organized another dinner in Bellevue as a reception for Jim. So Sunday morning, I picked up Jim Gray at his hotel in Bellevue and took him to a meeting of California legalization activists who were up for Hempfest. We all met at the Edgewater on the Seattle waterfront. There was about 15 leaders there from California. There was union leaders, hemp growers, dispensary association representatives, various old-timers. I don't know who all was there. There's a lot of them. Steve Cubby, who hitched a ride with us from Bellevue. They decided to scrap the 3 or 4 initiatives that had been planned and unite behind one for the good of the cause. Jim played the role of peacekeeper, bringing people together who haven't gotten along for years. Afterward, Jim had a radio interview for an hour, so I drove him to my in-laws' house in Montlake. He was able to meet Jack and Midge on their way out to a Mariners baseball game. Jim used their landline for the interview and thought it was a great view out the window there. And then next we went to a picnic in Kirkland for another meet and greet with members. After that, in early September, I had an NFIB, that's National Federation of Independent Business, Small Business Summit in Portland. And that was hosted by both the NFIB Washington and NFIB Oregon. So while down, I was there. I snuck up to Vancouver for a dinner with the Clark County members. And Clark County really has been going for a long time. And right now they've got new officers and they're really growing. There were a number of campaign events around the state, and I helped with the Western Washington Info Fair. Bill McCord also came up, so Katrina had a couple of old geezers out there to help her. After the election, I was assuming that we would have the regular drop-off in membership and interest. The key is to continue to meet in your local groups on a regular basis. I have a monthly meeting that I have, just a lunch meeting in Bellingham, and people can just drop by when they want to. And that group is really built to really build the local county party, and that's who's put this convention on. I planned and held the second Libertarian Day at the Capitol on January 31st. We had morning speakers with Jason Overstreet, he's an R from the 42nd here in Whatcom County, Trent England from the Freedom Foundation, Jason Mercier from Washington Policy Center, and Patrick Connor, the NFIB State Director. We had made appointments for those who registered in advance with their 2 reps and their senator. So we went to the Capitol with our LPWA name tags to show force, and we ran around testifying and meeting with our legislators, and it really had an impact. I hope to keep this as an annual event and like to have a lot more people next year. Mike Pickens came up with a proposal for the party at the January SEC meeting and made his presentation to us, and it was quite impressive. Ultimately, we entered into an agreement with him, and I appointed him as the executive director for the state. His team has really gotten started in the last few months. Due to their efforts, our attendance at this convention is much higher, and we've seen an unprecedented increase in membership in a year. And that's a year following a presidential election, and it's unheard of. We will see how he does, but at this point it looks like a banner year. The state of the Libertarian Party of Washington is strong. Thank you very much. We're going to move to Vice Chairman's report at this time. Michael Donahue, your Vice Chair.
In the tradition that I've tried to establish, is a very short report. The only thing worthwhile mentioning is that the Robert Dome estate, which left a percentage of Mr. Dome's estate to the Libertarian Party of Washington, is still, unfortunately, in probate, but it's coming down to a close, and we hope it'll be closed up in the next 6 months. There's a piece of real estate that still has to be sold, but they think they can do that. They've gotten all the other things taken care of under the estate, and so we're hopeful that we'll get some infusion of funds from that estate, hopefully before the end of this calendar year. Seeing as he died in 2011, I think it's about time that they got the estate closed. So that's all the report is, and nothing else from the Vice Chair.
Thank you very much, Michael. Treasurer's report, Jim Culbertson. You should probably come up here. We're filming and just realizing.
So, we brought in revenue for this convention, and we haven't paid any bills. So the accounts are standing relatively good. We've got $12,000+ in the bank at this point, so that's good. Memberships are up, and I was able to cut my first check to Libertarian Leadership Consulting, which is Michael in the back there. So
Very good.
good.
Thank you, Jim. We need a credentials report from Miles. I don't think he can hear me out there. Yeah, James, yeah. James and Jim. 5 minutes. He's still telling. Okay. Well, we could take a short recess here, I guess, for 5 minutes. I don't have anything else at the moment. What's that? Drinking coffee. Actually, I have an idea. I have here some Barack Obama toilet paper.
It's useless.
Just in case they run out here. And I will give it to the highest bidder. Who's willing to give me $5 for this? $5. Anybody $5? $5. $10. Anybody? $10. $10. $10. Anybody else? Oh, come on. How much? 10? Well, I got 10 already, so 11? 15. $15? 20. Who's 20? 20? I got 20 once?
25.
25. We're at 25. Anybody else? 25, 27.50? 25? Or 25, 25 once? 25 twice? There was a Michael Donahue for 25. Go pay the treasurer.
Got it. I'll use it.
Break. There's going to be a ton of coffee in the back. We'll play some music.
Okay. We can do a little coffee break. There's some coffee in the back if you want some. Like there's some water service somewhere here.
We have water.
We have water. There's water there too. Or take a quick restroom break and see Michael Donahue if you need toilet paper.